Today we are interviewing the Reverend Sarabeth Goodwin. She is the Latino missionary of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington and also the church planter and Latina missionary for Misa Magdalena in Aspen Hill, Maryland. And today we're going to talk about her ministry of love. So, hi, Sarabeth.
Hi, Mildred. How are you?
Well,
Good.
Thank you so much for taking this time.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so of course we have a series of questions that we have for you to getting to know a little bit more about this ministry of love that you have shared with us. The first question is, you're a white woman from West Virginia with a Latino heart. How did that develop within you?
Well, as a child, I was very curious about other cultures. And I spent hours and hours looking at the stack of National Geographics that we had in our house, maybe 10 years worth or something. I'm not sure, but I must have gone through them all. And I was just intrigued by the different cultures, and I really wanted to know all of them. And then in the first grade, my Aunt Christine, who spoke many languages, gave me a book that it was a picture book with words in 4 languages, and I memorized all of them in just a few days. And I easily saw the similarities. They were Romance languages, so I saw the similarities in all of them. And so this idea of learning about other cultures and learning languages was with me from the very beginning when I was pretty young. So I studied languages, French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, and then I traveled through Europe and discovered Andalusia in the south of Spain, and the coming together of the Moorish culture with the Jewish and Christian influences too was just so striking, and I just fell in love with it. So Spain kind of became, I really focused on the Spanish language at that point. I also taught school in France and lived in Portugal, and I think that because of that, I was just predisposed to do something different in my ministry that had to do with other cultures and other languages. It wasn't immediately apparent, but that's what happened.
Wow. I mean, I've heard about your travels, but just to get to see where it originally started from.
Yeah, look, what I found. I even found my book, See and Say. I brought it. I've taken it all through my life, and it's still with me because that was such a big influence on me. It's crazy, right?
Who would have thought that such a gift would have directed you in such a path?
I know. It's really funny.
Such a blessing.
It is.
So with this Latina heart that you have and this love for the languages, what attracted you to serve as Latino ministries initially, and what passion has kept you going?
Well, I think I first received an inkling of what the future might be when I was a seminarian. I was in my middle year, and there was a program that was initiated where seminarians could go to the Dominican Republic for the month of January. And so I decided to go. And I was so surprised because I thought, oh, this would be a wonderful way to spend January by the ocean. And then I met such wonderful people, and I was so impressed by the vibrance of people's faith. It was just, I was studying at their seminary, and on weekends I would go out to San Pedro de Macorís, which was about an hour away, and I would do ministry with the local priest during that time. And so one time, the priest was Sandino Sanchez, who became then a very good friend of mine. And I asked him, so Sandino, tell me about the faith of your people. Why is it so strong? And he said, well, Sarah, he said, in the Dominican Republic, we're very poor. We have so little that we know how much we need God. And you in the United States have so much that you think you don't need God.
Mm.
And somehow my heart was really touched by that, because I think I recognized I've had a wandering heart during my life and was away from the church for some time. And so I recognized my own wandering heart and realized that I needed that very faith. If I was going to pursue seminary and then a life in the priesthood, that I really needed what the people of the Dominican Republic, and I later came to know most Latinos, could offer me, was this vibrant, strong, unfailing faith. And so that's how it started.
What's the passion that's kept it going?
Well, that I have found that strong faith, and that people keep reinforcing that faith. Like working with people, it's been a mutual feeding. It's not been my giving to them; it's been also their giving to me. And so I've needed them to to realize, to come to know God more fully, and and Jesus, and the spirit of incarnation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Coming into this ministry, what have been some of the highlights of your time as Latina missioner at the parish level, but also at the diocesan level?
So when I went to St. Stephen and the Incarnation, I kind of went alone. I was just my husband and I, and my youngest daughter, and it was kind of like, I fortunately had the Reverend Jesus Reyes as my mentor, who really prepared me to be able to walk into this place alone. And he said to me when I began to doubt my call, because my call was so overwhelming and so strong, that I knew that I was, needed to plant a congregation. But then when it got right down to it, I started to be a little, I got cold feet. So I said to Jesus that I was getting cold feet, and he said to me, well, because, because I was a white woman, not Latina, and of a certain age. And I said, who's going to come to a church with, what Latino in the right mind is going to come to a church like this? So it was quite a challenge, and but people did come, and it began to grow. And in our first year, I because I was charged with two things. One was to start a Spanish-speaking congregation. The other was to bring the congregations together. So I decided, well, all Anglos know about the Day of the Dead. So I thought, oh, this would be a great way to bring people together. And so I proposed it to my congregation. And one of my leaders said, Madre, this is not our custom. And so I said to him, well, none of this is my custom, but why don't we try it, and maybe together it will become our custom. So we did. And the Day of the Dead became something very very important at St. Stephen's, not only for the Spanish speakers, but also for the English speakers, because many said to me, we don't really have a tangible way to honor our dead. So it became something that all of us did together, and we got to know each other and appreciate each other in a different way. So that was one of the highlights. So the other one was I was given some artifacts and icons, statues, paintings of the Virgin Mary. And there was an empty wall at St. Stephen's, and somehow I began to visualize like an arc and making a collage of all these things. And so I invited my artist friend, Anadina Vasquez, who is a Tejana with and a well-known religious folk artist, and she came up and helped me visualize what. And well, I won't tell that part because then it gets really long.
You have planted two Latino congregations in our diocese, Misa Alegría at St. Stephen's and the Incarnation in Washington, D.C., and Misa Magdalena at St. Mary Magdalene in Aspen Hill, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
What have been the joys of doing this ministry?
Okay, I think the joy of doing this ministry is the same joy that a person who loves flowers has to plant a seed and watch it grow. And that's been that kind of joy of seeing something be born. And in the specific area of this ministry, I'd say that all immigrants, when they come to this country, lose the sense of community. They've left their families and their communities behind, and they are very disconnected from everything that gave them life before, and everything is new and difficult. And to be able to offer a place of safety and welcome where they're able to grow roots and to be connected to the people that are part of their congregation. And the congregation truly becomes their family here. They often bring their families if they have them, but others are sometimes here alone and are having to recreate community from zero. And so that has been that's the important most for me the most important work that I do is the building of community and helping people realize where God is in the community and where they are in God as well. So it's very moving. It's very moving to be able to kind of be a um, to help give birth to that, a midwife, you know. So yeah, Hadula. That's kind of what it feels like. And particularly being a woman, I have that sense of it. Mary Magdalene, we're very young and only 3.5 years old. And 10 months of that have been spent in pandemic mode. And, but I mean, even with meeting online, I see a leadership group coming together. And this summer, there was a lot of, we've often been wondering, so what are we going to do to help the community? And then when pandemic time came, there was a real concern about people who were hungry in the community. And we had the opportunity through the summer to go to rent a truck or to have a truck filled with boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables. We would bring them to the church and distribute them, and that ministry kept growing to include about 650 boxes of food every Friday. And it was and one of the strongest things about this ministry is it gave the English language community and the Spanish language community an opportunity to come together and to work shoulder to shoulder and to really start to form those bonds that hopefully will hold us together when we return to our buildings. And after August, that ended. And I had a couple of women who were very concerned that it had ended because so many people were going to be without food. So they, on their own, initiated conversations with different feeding ministries and tried to find out how they could go about feeding the community. And they managed to connect with a distribution point about an hour away from us. And now between the English language congregation and the Latino congregation, they're rotating on who brings the food and then who takes it out to be distributed. So they, on their own, these lay women from the congregation have organized a feeding ministry that will go through the end of December. And then we don't know what, but we're now feeding about 125 families. So it's
So you mentioned something that is perfect segue into our next question. You've been very involved in immigrant and refugee rights for quite some time. Why is it so important to you for the church and also for the larger, for our country?
Well, I mean, for the church, it's pretty basic because it's like the idea of how we treat the stranger or how we treat the foreigner is so predominant, particularly in the Old Testament. where, it's written that you should welcome the stranger and treat them as your own, as if they're one of you. And when I see, I see a lot of the church not doing that. It's like pick and choose what you're going to do, and if it doesn't suit you to welcome the stranger, then you just don't do it, and you forget that mandate is there. And to me, it's just so vital. Human rights are, I just feel that the church really needs to support everything that has to do with the common good. We're all in this together, and Jesus's commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves isn't just about the people we know. It's about the people we don't know. It's about the human race, and if we're going to survive or not. So if we're going to survive, we have to be very open to struggling for the common good. What is good for the majority of people? What is the best thing that we can do for all to make the world livable? And it's about sustaining the human race on this planet. Is we need to be kind and loving to everybody and look for the common good.
So family is a key to your identity. Your family has supported you in your ministry. In what ways has your ministry had an impact on their lives and faith?
Well, it's kind of part of it is very obvious, and others are a little bit more hidden. I would say that for my children, my two daughters, when Lisa was growing up, I was really out of the church. That was one of my periods of wandering heart. So she didn't get, the base. She never really went to church with us much, and so I think she felt a little left out partially. Kara, who is 14 years younger than Lisa, grew up in the church before I went to seminary. So she was in the choir at St. Albans and loved it and went to Sunday school. And then, of course, she was uprooted when I went to Church of the Redeemer, which was when I was a seminarian. I was a seminarian there during my time at VTS. And so the uprooting at that tender age was difficult for her, but not nearly as difficult as the uprooting from Church of the Redeemer to the Latino congregation of St. Stephen's. So that was rough on Kara. And both of my daughters are, I would call them seekers, but they're kind of still seeking. They love and respect what I do and participate when they can, and their lives have been enriched, especially, when people come over for parties and she gets to know everybody, so both of them have gotten to know friends of ours and are enriched for having that connection with our community. John, on the other hand, John was not in favor of my going to seminary to start with, but he got on board. He said, when people would say it's very wonderful of you to let Sarabeth go to seminary and everything, he says, well, when the train is coming down the track, you sometimes just have to get out of the way. And so my biggest surprise, truly, was when I was called to Latino Ministry, and that John went with me so willingly. And it was such a, he connected in a way that I certainly didn't expect him to, because he didn't speak Spanish. But what I later discovered and remembered, that his grandparents were immigrants. His grandparents had come to this country from Karpata Rus, which is now Ukraine, and they had started the Russian Orthodox Church in Lakewood, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it was kind of this coming together, and John very quickly developed a very strong prayer life. It was almost like a litany when he would go to the woods to walk the dog, of praying for people. Just a long list. He would have a long list of people that he would go through in his morning walk, and I was really jealous of his prayer life. To come from a place of not of being totally agnostic to have a rich prayer life was really something. And John quickly began to sing in the choir in Spanish, and he has developed his own ministries by providing legal help to people, and transportation, and just being a friend, And he's also learned to speak Spanish. So it's when I was considering at one point if I should remain in Latino ministry or if it was time to maybe shift to something else. And he said to me, you would have to drag me kicking and screaming to a traditional Episcopal church. And then I knew that my path was sealed. Yeah. Oh, golly. But it's been rich. It's been having John as a partner in ministry has been one of the biggest blessings of my life. We have done this together and will continue in some way to do this together. So it's just been a rich blessing to have him by my side.
No, like I said, thank you for sharing your family with us as well, because that enrichment of your ministry to your family has also trickled down from your family back to ministry. And what a great gift we have had and continue to have. Latino ministry has historically been led by male clergy. As society changes and we give more attention to asking who's at the table, there are growing numbers of Latina women who are exploring calls to lay and ordained ministry. What wisdom would you give them as they navigate God's call?
Well, I think first I would have them examine their own understanding of women's place in the church. And I say this from my own experience because growing up in a certain time, I didn't see a lot of women priests. And then having lived abroad for a long time right before my call, I obviously didn't see women priests either. So when I came back and felt called to ministry, it was kind of like, but wait a minute, I mean, is this really for women? So those things that you're born with or what you've seen examples of really figure largely, in a big way in how one thinks about their own service. So I would say to women who are examining a call to make sure that you don't have any residue of ideas, social, that you've learned in your own culture or your own upbringing about the place of women in leadership. And then to listen to God's call. And as it becomes clear, to go forward boldly, just to go forward boldly, and share all your gifts, all your creativity, and allow that feminine part of God to be seen.
Mm.
Yeah.
That touches me just because you and I have been on such a journey as you have been walking with me. So we've talked about roles, we've talked about music and prayer and family. And we talked about kind of how you've come about to this ministry of Latinos. Who is Jesus to you? Tell us a little bit about your faith story.
Well, let me start with who Jesus is for me. And I think that just piggybacking on yesterday's gospel, I think that Jesus for me is not the messenger. Jesus is the message. So, and that message is that God is love, and we are loved. And Jesus, for me, is the incarnation of God's love. And so I think that Jesus, one of the things he constantly says in the scriptures is, follow me. And that whole idea of following Jesus can lead us to understand about our own incarnation, that we too are the incarnation, are called to be the incarnation of God's love in the world. So that's Jesus for me, leads me to understanding, if I follow him in the path of justice and peace and love, that I will become God's incarnation in this world too. And if all of us could do that, imagine what a great world it would be, you know? So it's a big challenge, but it's a beautiful message, a beautiful idea that I still think it has the power to change the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
Mhm.
So, as you are passing the baton, what are your hopes for Latino ministries within our diocese and the larger Episcopal Church?
Well, I mean, my hopes are that Latino ministry will stop being such a strange little ministry out there and will become much more mainstream, and that the church can realize the beauty of diversity when you bring how it strengthens. I mean, one of the in bilingual worship, bilingual bicultural worship, multicultural worship that is done right, there's such strength in it, such joy, and everybody is lifted up by it. So, I mean, that would be the thing, that it becomes, I feel that it, rather than being a ministry that's kind of we hope it will do well and we're trying to make it grow and all of that, that it will just become a part of the Episcopal Church, that and we are starting to see that in the growth of our leadership, in the I think in the maturity that of our congregations. And well, one of the signs of that for me, one of the biggest signs, particularly as I'm passing the baton, is seeing that a little girl who grew up in this diocese in one of our congregations is now sitting in front of me, talking to me, interviewing me, and I am passing you the baton, Mildred Reyes, and it's just so exciting to see a product of our own churches to grow up so gifted and talented, and you're going to lead Latino ministry in new directions. And I just am so excited about watching what you're going to do, and knowing that. And if I had words for you, I'd say the sky's the limit. Really. And so I am just so excited about being able to pass the baton to you. And I know that Latino ministry is going to thrive and flourish under your care.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarabeth.
Thank you, Mildred.
I am a product of you and so many. And it's that God's, as you said, the planting of the seeds that have been planted by you and so many around that give me this joy and bring me to where I am. And I am so looking forward to what together we will continue to build.
Yes, it's going to be wonderful.